Hello and welcome to People in Profit. I'm Charles Pellegrin, and today from our studios in Paris, we deliver a new show to all of you watching around the world about delivery workers. In cities like Paris, London, and Beijing, they zigzag through traffic, rushing to move food orders across these cities, the rhythm of their work life dictated by the faceless online platforms that pay them as independent contractors for every delivery they make. Well, one of these platforms is Deliveroo, popular in the UK and France, and for the first time last year, they finally turned a profit. But what about the delivery drivers and riders? Well, in France at least, their revenues are falling. Between 2021 and 2024, they've seen their hourly rates drop on the country's three major delivery platforms, close to 26% lower on Uber Eats to 20 euros an hour, and 13% on Deliveroo to 26 euros an hour. Well, to better understand the plight of these workers of the digital age, we'll talk to Jamie Woodcock. He's a senior lecturer in the digital economy at King's College in London. He's also the author of the book, The Fight Against Platform Capitalism. Jamie, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join you.
First off, why have these delivery drivers' revenues fallen in the past few years?
So I think this is a very good question. And I think, this is an almost universal thing that drivers talk about. If you speak to drivers, whether in London, whether in Paris or anywhere else, that there is a really strong downward pressure on drivers' wages. And a lot of this is about the movement towards piece rate, so being paid per delivery. And over time, the amount that people are paid for deliveries, falling lower and lower. And I think, a lot of viewers will also recognize the cost of living is increasing, almost everywhere at the moment. And so we have this cost of living increase along with a downward pressure on drivers' wages.
One major problem for these workers is the employment status that they have. In the UK, a court upheld their status as independent contractors. That's also how they are considered legally in France. Yet platforms seem to be the ones who are able to set the prices for their labor.
And this is a very long-running issue for this kind of work, of what kind of status these people are actually working under. And you're right that there has been a case in Britain to talk about whether or not these riders are self-employed, but this has come up time and time again in the courts. And my understanding of this is that if you are genuinely self-employed, you should have the right to set your own rates. You should have control over your own work. What we're seeing with this kind of work is people who previously would have been employed by a company no longer having the full rights that they would have as an employee. And in particular, this is about rights like social protection, to have access to a pension, sick pay, holiday pay, but also crucially about access to things like minimum wages. And I think one of the problems we see in this work is so many people want access to flexible work. And on platforms like this, they're only able to get that if they give up protections that other workers have had access to for a very long time.
They face significant dangers on a daily basis, which is why this protection could be important, whether it's exposure to pollution, potential traffic accidents and injuries. Are there any kind of existing safety nets that exist?
So I think this is an important question. One of the differences of having this self-employment relationship is that technically and legally, platforms don't have a responsibility to pay sick pay or to cover the cost of accidents or damages if these things happen. And there's been quite a lot of research carried out in this kind of work that shows if you pay people not an hourly rate, but you pay them by delivery, the incentives mean that people work harder, they work faster, and they're much more prone to accidents. The way I think about this is, even if there isn't a legal responsibility, I think there is a moral responsibility to platforms to think of what they should be doing to support people when there are accidents, because these do happen very frequently. And too often it's left to workers themselves to look after each other, to find ways to deal with accidents and illnesses in this kind of work.
So potentially one thing here would be advocating or pushing for being paid on an hourly basis as opposed to being paid per delivery. And we've seen labor organizing in the UK and France on part of these workers with the protests and even some advances in France in 2023. Unions signed an agreement that set a minimum hourly rate of 11 euros and 75 cents. But you've shown that there's also solidarity and organizing happening across borders. Tell us more.
So I think this is one of the things that has come up in lots and lots of different countries in different contexts, is everywhere these platforms operate, they have been met by protests from workers, often around issues of payments changing or access to rights and benefits, and increasingly also unions becoming either established or becoming involved in supporting these workers to improve their conditions. One of the things that I think is quite interesting about this is, in lots of low-paid work, there are similar conditions, between France or between the UK or elsewhere. But these are common employers. So Deliveroo or Uber become common employers across national boundaries. That mean what we've seen in practice is workers coming together transnationally to think about the similarities in their conditions and then to think about how they can take action together. So to give two very quick examples of this, during Deliveroo's IPO in London a few years ago, there were international protests in the run-up to this, showing that Deliveroo still have these problems with how they're treating workers. And on May Day this year, there will be a strike of Uber drivers coordinated across different countries that I think is important not only for this kind of work, but also for showing what unions can do more widely.
Can you give us a sense of how these platforms actually work and how they attribute orders to drivers?
So one of the big innovations of this kind of platform work is the use of what we would call algorithmic management. So using computational systems to automate the distribution of this work and also the monitoring of workers. So checking how long it takes for orders to go out. There is quite a lot of mystery with many people about how these systems work, because platforms have developed these technologies in a very they don't want to share them more widely because they become trade secrets.
Let's focus on one country in particular, China, where all three of the country's top delivery platforms almost simultaneously announced new social security benefits for their drivers in March. This could be a significant moment. Youth unemployment has reached 17%, and its economy is stuck in a slump, meaning there are over 10 million people who have become delivery drivers in the country. Our correspondent, Yenna Lee, went to meet them and sent us this report.
They're a part of the landscape in every major Chinese city. Delivery drivers weaving through traffic or resting in between orders. 32-year-old Du Ai-chin is one of them. He works from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
I'll just put it here, okay?
He makes a little over €1 per delivery, and the more he completes, the more he earns. Having done this for a decade, Du knows all the shortcuts to the apartments and office buildings on his turf.
It's lunchtime now, got lots of orders, got to go to the next place.
Newcomers can struggle to make ends meet, but Du is a veteran. Last month, he completed around 1,400 orders. Except tax says most of that falls directly in his pocket as he has no social security. Meituan, China's top delivery platform, the app he works for, has just announced plans to widen coverage for its drivers. Du is cautiously optimistic.
Once you have social security, when you get sick or need to do something, everything should be better. When you grow old, in the future, at least you'll have some form of security, right? But what if they end up lowering your salary?
He does worry, though, just how much it'll cost him. Labour rights researcher Julie Chen says gig workers like Du are in a structurally disadvantageous position.
They are facing the forced dilemma to choose between income versus security. They do not have institutionally protected labour rights for collective bargaining.
While platforms expand social coverage, they're also looking into ways to cut costs elsewhere. Meituan has started using drones. The flying machines made 200,000 deliveries last year and could slowly replace human workers across China.
So, Jamie, what do you make of that development for China's delivery drivers?
So I think this is a very important development, and I think it's a recognition that, workers can't continue to work in these kinds of conditions without any access to social protection. And I think a very big one here is, for example, access to pensions, that a lot of workers don't realise, initially the impact that a loss of a pension might have. But these costs will have to be borne by society as people start to retire and don't have access elsewhere. So I think this is a very positive development.
And finally, because we're already running out of time, I'd like to end on a recommendation on your behalf with regards to the tipping of delivery drivers, especially in countries like France, where it is completely optional. What would you recommend?
So what I would recommend is, historically we always used to tip for this kind of work, and it's become much less common with platform delivery work. And what I would say is you should tip people. You should tip people for this kind of work. But also, when you're doing the tipping, talk to people about their work and their conditions, because these are issues that affect everybody and not just delivery drivers.
Jamie Woodcock, you are a senior lecturer in the digital economy at King's College in London. Thank you for sharing your insights here on Press 24.
Thank you.
Well, you heard it here. You know what to do the next time you order in. And maybe you'd also like to watch some of our previous episodes. Just look up People and Profit on the France 24 app or listen on the podcast platform of your choice. In the meantime, thank you for watching and stay tuned.